Hello, everybody. Today we're going to go through what the heck is a Microsoft Viva. And I've actually got it phrased this way in the title because I have heard people say, oh, we just need a Microsoft Viva for that. Or how much is a Microsoft Viva? And we're going to kind of demystify some of those pieces. And there's a very specific reason I have a date on here, which is we're going to go through that. But first of all, I'm just going to introduce myself to you folks. My name is Rhia Wieclawek. You don't have to remember that. Rhia W is totally fine. That's all you need. I'm an independent consultant based out of Vancouver, British Columbia in Canada. I'm just recently independent, so this is a new world for me. But my main focuses are I like training folks. I'm mostly focused into process improvement and automation through things like robotic process automation, business process automation, Power Automate, Intex, whatever, all that kind of good stuff. SharePoint and Teams and change management. Those are kind of my main areas. But let's hop into what you are here for, which is talking about Microsoft Viva and kind of breaking it down into what it actually is. This is going to be a lot of stuff in a pretty small amount of time. So by all means, if you have questions, pop them into the chat. And we're going to talk through what this is all about and how it can benefit you. So the first thing I want to point out is that they've brought this Viva stuff over the past few years in a very new and exciting sort of way. They made it sound so fresh and new. This new Microsoft Viva broken down into 4 different types of things. We have topics, connections, insights, and learning. And it sounds all fresh, but actually it's old things relabeled. They've now been created into their own specific little modules, and they've been relabeled. So previously, connections was topics, topics was Project Cortex. Connections was the Teams home site app. Insights was My Analytics, which we started seeing pretty early on. And then, of course, learning was just LinkedIn Learning. Microsoft acquired that, rolled it all together, and now we are going to benefit from it. So first, we're going to dive into connections. Connections is where we're going to start because it's probably the most visible to most people, and you may already have it in your tenant. And actually, if I go through this, and even at the beginning, if you have it in your tenant, if you could just push a thumbs up through the Teams chat, just to let me know, because I'm very curious about who's taking advantage of each of these. So for connections, we have the purpose of informing. So making sure that people across the organization are aware of what's going on, engaging, making sure that people across the organization know that other people are engaging and getting people to click on things and move through things, and then deploying. So whenever you deploy something new, making sure you redirect people to those areas so they understand what's going on. And it's broken down in the following ways. So first things first is we have this app rail on the left-hand side. You can see here in my picture, just to the left, it's a little house. You can actually modify that icon. And when you click on it, it's going to bring out your global navigation. But it follows you throughout SharePoint. It's not just from your internet. It's not just from your home site. It's on any SharePoint you go to. And I remember when that first came out, those of you who might have, internet in a boxes on your organization sites, you might have noticed that you had 2 app rails for a little while there. And that's when it was brand new. But now it's there, it's here to stay, and it's pretty useful now. I like to use it for reinforcing what my enterprise architecture is going to look like. So for example, you can see in my screenshot here, it's broken down by, okay, an intranet is different than a collaboration area, is different than an extranet, is different than where the departments work together. And that's how I kind of structure it. The next piece we have is actually inside of Teams. So once you have that home site set up, which is usually your intranet, you can then set up a Teams app really easily, brand it to your own stuff, a little icon, a little name, and your intranet will now be in Teams. During the past, 3 or so years, what we saw happen, I'm sure we all saw it happen, was that everyone flocked into Teams because we were working remotely. Big shock. But now you don't actually have to leave. You can click on that, and it's going to open up the intranet right there. You don't need to go anywhere. The next piece of that is if you click again on that same app, it's actually going to open a little slider for you, a little slice there. And it's going to reconfirm that same navigation you had before on the inside. But on top of that, it's also going to show you the sites that you go to most frequently. And it's also going to show you news that is targeted to you based on what it's tracking in the background. So it's good in that way too. And again, all in teams. Now, the other part that's not as popular quite yet because they're still working on it is the dashboard function of connections. Now, it only has a few things right now, a few little what we know as web parts. You have things like approvals and tasks and top news and whatnot. But the intention of this is that you would land on somewhere and have these cards that pull things from across all the different sites that you may have. It's also specific for mobile so that you can have a organizational app ready to go. Based on what I've seen and what I've seen on their roadmap, I think that Microsoft's intention with this is to actually replace the need for Internet in the boxes entirely, because what it's going to do is look across all of your sites, make sure the permissions are correct, and then pull back anything based on the user viewing it without too much effort, which is really interesting to think about how they're going to do that. It also pulls things across from Microsoft Stream, Yammer, and of course, SharePoint News across the board. Okay. So that is all about connections. And I wanted to start with connections because it is by far the easiest one. It is the smallest of all the things that are out there. And like I say, it's the most used right now. But now we're going to take a look at learning. And learning, I am so glad that I redid this presentation. I did this presentation about a year and a half ago. And I was thinking, oh, I'm sure it hasn't changed too much. I don't need to make too many updates. I needed to rewrite the entire thing. So even if you were to go look this up tomorrow, it might be different again, but we're going to go up to everything as it was last night. So Viva Learning. So Viva Learning's purpose is to get people to discover training on their own without having too much, like, having to send too much to them, being able to recommend training between different people, and making sure it's all accessible in one place so you don't have to go flip around between different things. So the first thing is that you end up having a dashboard of recommended courses. So if I'm a user, I open up Teams, I have this nice area where I can see all of the things that are coming across that are recommended for me based on different things. When I first open this, it actually starts asking me, what am I interested in? Like, what am I looking for? And it will help curate based on that. But more importantly, is it really is coming across from many, many, many different things. So for example, you can, if you have a premium account for Viva, which we're going to go through licensing at the end here as well, just to, get you excited about looking at licensing. Everybody loves that. You can point to things like InLearning, Skillsoft, Coursera, Pluralsight, et cetera, et cetera. But the most important one for me is, I think, the your own SharePoint training site. So if you wanted to have that come up inside of LinkedIn Learning, you can go into the admin center, show the specific SharePoint site that you want to act as training, and send it across. You, as an admin in this scenario, you can also say which providers you want to show, and you can see how they are organized when people go searching for them. So by LinkedIn or by Pluralsight or whatever else, but all in one place so people don't have to go get lost in all these different sites. When we start looking at how the learning actually works, it's broken down into 4 different types. They call it social learning, but there's the 4 main areas of share courses casually through chats. So like, oh, hey, I just took this great thing about time management. I'm going to send it to Rob. I'm going to send it in a chat. I'm just going to go into my chat and I'm going to click Viva Learning and I'm going to choose it and I'm going to send it. Or making general recommendations. I just took this course. I give it 4 out of 5 stars. Pretty casual, but it, collaborates it together. Recommend as a leader with the word recommend in air quotes because it's more of an assignment. As soon as there's a due date, it's it's an assignment. And then curating learning set in Teams tabs. And that's probably the coolest one, I think, and I'll show you what that looks like. When you're making a recommendation, it's pretty easy. Like here, for example, you can see someone sending a Teams chat that just says, hey, here it is. You can click on it, jump into it. You can make a recommendation directly to a person. If I was just saying, hey, I've got a colleague who's, been having issues with this thing. Here's a course on it. I can send it across. No big deal. There's a recommend button on the different learning pieces. So that's pretty easy to do, pretty straightforward. Now, as a leader, as a manager, if I wanted to assign something to my team, I can choose those people, put them in, put a comment in, and make a due date. And as soon as I do that, it's going to be trackable. It becomes an assignment rather than just a recommendation. And it makes it easy for the users to track. So, for example, I can see as a manager in my views of I recommended these different things to these groups of people. And whenever I want to, I can click on it and then see the progress of each of the people that I've recommended it to. It's a much easier way to track the progress of your reports, for example, your team, to make sure that they're actually getting through it. And of course, you can see this for everything and at a glance as well. Now, as a specific person logging in, if I've had things recommended to me, I can see things like, okay, here's my assigned to you. And this is why I use those quotes earlier, is you can see that even Microsoft is saying, hey, this is an assignment. This is not a recommendation. This is not casual. So it gives you the tabs to say, these are all the ones that have dates, whether or not it's overdue and when it is due, so that you can go through them. The recommended to you, hey, this was casual, Sharon just sent this over for you to look at. No date on it, bookmarked, recently viewed and completed. So it makes it easy for you to go through and see all these different courses that you might want to do over time. Because so much is free now, it's kind of overwhelming sometimes. I've got my own list of all these different things I want to take. Now, this is very cool, and especially for those of you who are using Teams a lot, and maybe you're using it for things like onboarding, maybe you're using it for things like, when a PMO is getting organized or a new project of a specific type. Maybe it's a quick learning on, for example, like greenfield operations. Who knows what it's going to be? So what you can do is you can go into Viva Learning and say, okay, I want to set up a greenfield learning. I can go in, I can create a tab name inside of Teams. I can find courses and check them off. And then as soon as I do that, I now have a tab inside of my team named in that way that only has those courses. So it says, hey, if you're part of this team, these are going to be very relevant to you. You can also start copying them across so they become standard and people can access them. And then the final piece inside of learning is all about the actual topics themselves and making featured sets. So if you're familiar with something like a carousel of news, it's the same idea. It just means that when you first come to your dashboard as an admin, you have control over what are people going to see as the featured thing. So they're not going to go search for it. So you're going to show them things like time management tips, or maybe, the newest SharePoint training that might be out there, or how to use Teams, that kind of stuff. And you can choose the dates of when it's going to be there and come through. You can say what's active, you can publish it, and it's going to keep cycling through that dashboard top level. And that's going to keep things fresh, let people know that you're paying attention there and making recommendations to them through this organizational level as opposed to a one-on-one level. And that is where we are at with learning right now. Like I say, last time I did this, they've made a lot of changes. The recommendations are different because they're now behind a paywall, essentially, which isn't too bad. Like I say, we'll go through that. But now we're going to hop into topics. So topics is interesting, and this is the one that used to be Project Cortex. And the aim of this, I think, is to get rid of the need for things like wikis. It's going to take over where we used to always see inside of all the SharePoint sites like a wiki for every single thing. I have a feeling the same thing is going to happen for Microsoft Teams. So the purpose of it is to identify content that is being reused, people mentioning it all the time. It's a common topic, to curate it. So once it's determined what those topics are, it's going to go scrounge and look for data about those topics and then discover, so that when users are maybe new to your organization, they saw a word or an acronym they've never seen before, they can hover over it and discover what it's all about instead of having to go and ask 6 different people to get to the bottom of it. So on that, the first thing, and I'm wondering, I can't wait to see this actually in use live. But again, it's also premium. So when you have this, if you mention a specific thing inside of Teams or SharePoint, for example, it's automatically going to underline it and make it so when you hover, you get this card that pops out. The cool thing about topics is that, like I say, it automatically generates this data. Now, it all has to be approved first. People have to say whether or not they're actually an expert in it. They have to confirm that as the system is learning, but it creates this for you, puts a little paragraph together, identifies alternate names for the same thing, and it makes it very context specific, which is going to be so much easier when you're having chats about something and everyone's using acronyms you don't know. It also appears inside of search. So if people start doing a search thing, it's going to pop down in the search with its own card as well. So when you actually click onto that card, it takes you to the page, and the page is where it houses that data. So these pages bring together things like news where that's been mentioned, files where it's either in the metadata for it, or if it's inside the file itself, like maybe on a title or a subtitle or whatever else. It's going to bring that. It's going to show the people who are most associated to that specific thing. Again, that title across the top. And the acronyms. And you can see here in this screenshot that there's these little wiggly, like verified Twitter check marks, basically. And what that is that people have verified that, yes, they are an expert and they are ready for questions. So while it puts all these things together, the admin or whomever else will come in that has appropriate permissions will come in and say, yes, this is true. Hey, these are great files. I want to pin this particular one because I think it's the most important. So even though it's automated for the most part, you still do have control over it. And this is an example of what it might look like when it's asking about who might be an expert in this. So if you were to come into search and search Mark 8 in this example, it says, hey, this is a suggested topic. Maybe it's not confirmed yet, but it's still going to pop up. It's going to show what's associated to it. And it's also asking the question of like, hey, is this person right for this topic? We can say yes or no. And as a person who's searching, I'm just giving my feedback. I'm not confirming or denying it. I'm just saying what I think. Now, when you're actually in the background and you're an admin or you're verifying your own expertise in the topics area, you can see here how it's asking us about it. So we've listed you on these topics. Did we get it right? And you can say, yes, you want to be listed, or no, remove me. So if you don't want to, maybe you are a really, you're an expert in Visual Basic, but you don't want people to come to you for it, you can remove yourself. Same thing down here of you have this panel where you can see, hey, what are your suggested topics? What are the confirmed topics that are out there? And see at a glance everything that's been marked. Now, the final piece of this right now, and this is brand new, is the how topics are connected to each other. So when all these topics are being generated and whatnot, they turn into this web so we can see how all these things happen. Now, this is a pretty small web because I'm pretty sure they have just started working on this. This appeared very recently, but I think the hope is that eventually we're going to see how everything connects. I can't wait to see what that actually looks like. A quick intermission at the 18-minute break here, and I just want to know, so the Outlook 2010 user profile silhouette, who is that created from? Does anyone know? Feel free to type in the chat, or if you know and you don't want to tell, you can thumbs up. So the thought on this particular one is that it was actually based on Bill Gates's mugshot. It is, yeah, exactly, Kim. So it's not, it hasn't been verified, and Microsoft has also done this kind of thing before. They used to do it all the time. They won't validate it, but it seems pretty clear. Just thought it was kind of interesting. Curious if you agree, but just a little tidbit that gave me a little bit of time to drink some water. So the final of the different topics or the different Viva pieces that we're going to go through is insights. And insights is a little crazy. It has some depth to it. It has some concerns in it. So let's get into this and give you an idea of what's there. So the purpose of insights is supposed to be supporting your workforce. That's through wellness and productivity, that kind of stuff. It's supposed to be to make folks engage. So it's actually actively reaching out to people and saying, hey, this email, have you looked at this? Here's your to-dos. Here's this, here's that. And adopting. So this is how we work as an organization. Here's what we think you should be doing next. Hey, have you been in teams lately? That kind of stuff. Those are the goals of insights. And there are 4 different levels of insights. There's personal insights, which we see and are peppered with probably every day. I keep getting my Viva daily insights, and I keep meaning to turn it off, but I haven't yet. Manager insights, leadership insights, and then advanced insights. Okay. So like for personal, it's about Teams and Outlook, and it's pretty general. It's about making sure that you have regular breaks and that you're focusing on the day, that you're organizing yourself and whatnot, to making sure that you block time if you need to. For managers, it's more about seeing across the board and making sure people aren't burning out. For leaders, it's looking for advantages to increase productivity across the board. Overall, the purpose of it seems to be pretty positive, but there is definitely some data in there that could go the other direction. And we'll look at that. We're going to start with the easy stuff, though, the personal insights. So like I say, we see this in an email, but if you actually go to your Viva Insights dashboard, which you'll all have if you're on Teams, you add it into your Teams app in the little left-hand side, and it's going to give you some different options. First of all, it's going to tell you to have a good evening or afternoon or whatever. Fine. It's also going to track how are you feeling if you click on something. Now, I don't actually know what it's going to do with that. I assume it's logging it away somewhere based on the amount of meetings that you have or the types of meetings you have. It says it's private, and I'm sure it is, but I know that it's going to be taking that as a number on an anonymous employee level and applying it to something. But whatever, if you're into that, fine. Microsoft has also partnered with Headspace to take you through, mindfulness and wellness and whatnot. And if you have a billing code for that, cool, do it. It reminds you to send praise to your colleagues. And that's something I've always really liked. It's a bit fluffy, but I think it's important to say thank you to folks when they help you, especially since, we all end up working together and it's just a give and take exchange. So, hey, not bad. Stay connected. So it brought up like, hey, you haven't spoken to this person recently, you used to all the time or whatever else, telling you to book your focus time and, of course, your Microsoft to-do list. It's a pretty basic, inoffensive dashboard. I don't have a problem with this. The booking focus time has been interesting, and I'm seeing more and more people adapt this as the days go on. I keep, trying to book time with some other folks, and I'll see they have it booked for focus time. So, of course, I'll ask them instead of just booking straight over. But this is kind of cool, too. And the other thing I like about this is since we've had remote work, it's actually like, hey, remember that just because you're at home in front of a computer doesn't mean you have to work until midnight. You mindfully disconnect from work. And it helps you automatically set that up, which I think is great because a lot of folks need that. And also looking for that focus time. And I think it's just great that they think people should have 1 to 4 hours of focus time every day. I would love to see that for folks. The next piece is around it will go through basically your Teams chats, your emails, and automatically bring back, hey, you didn't respond to this, or this person asked you a question, or you have a report that you haven't had a one-on-one with. And actually what was funny is before I left my last company, one of my reports, I had one of these come up where it says schedule a one-on-one. You don't have a one-on-one with Kira in the next little while. So I just made a meeting with her immediately that just said, because Microsoft wants us to. We had a one-on-one. It went pretty well. It was a good reminder. It was something that I hadn't been doing. And hey, whatever. I mean, it's Microsoft. They're putting these things together because it makes sense, I guess. It worked on me anyway. The next piece here is, of course, that in some of your insights is they are showing you data about how you specifically work. So, hey, are you doing things during your quiet time? And this is where it kind of starts to get creepy, but I'll show you more in the background there of, hey, your collaboration during your quiet time has increased from 6.5 to 9.5 hours the past weeks. So what that's telling us is during the time that we have blocked for focus time or after work time, this person's been sending emails or messages or whatever else during that time, and it's being tracked. You had 2 quiet days, 50% of your time was spent collaborating, 10 of your 28 days focus time booked. What's happening during your quiet time, and it's trying to help you bring that down. So like I say, positive insights if you are in a position to kind of fight against them. Now let's look from the manager side. It's not too bad here. It's pretty clear on what they're trying to do on this side as well. So the manager insights are about all of the people that report to you. It's very similar on like, hey, you got this email from Henrietta and you haven't responded. I think managers need that. I don't know about you guys, but I've had managers that never respond. Telling you to schedule one-on-ones, sending praise to your specific team, knowing what your team's kind of up to. What are they doing? Like, how is their collaboration? Trying to get people to set up no meeting days, which I think is also great. Knowing if you're in daily contact or not. And I think this is kind of neat, where it's like on 15 out of your 20 working days in the past 4 weeks, one direct report had contact with you on more than 10 days. Getting to a place where you can actually be a good manager. And there are tips and tricks and whatnot that follow you through this dashboard that also seem pretty positive. They are good tips. So understanding what these meetings look like so that you as a manager can help reduce that. And there's some other statistics that come along with it. So for example, courtesy habits on like plan the next 2 weeks. Don't just sneak up behind your employee and suddenly do a one-on-one in the next half hour. Book time with these people. Or here's the time when you had your last one-on-one, your next one. What do your meetings look like? What was your meeting impact? That kind of stuff. I think that's pretty good stuff. Nothing horrible there. Then we get to the leader insights. The leader insights are intended at a high level to understand how everyone is working and see where you can kind of get time back, make sure people don't burn out, do what you can as a leader. They have a dashboard just like everybody else where they can see what's happening. So things like the overall statistics for how often managers are meeting. So if it's important for managers to have one-on-ones, it's important for leaders to have one-on-ones with their managers, and that their managers are having one-on-ones with their colleagues. Also understanding who's working late, how many people are working longer than they ought to be, or in outside times, or whatever else. There are some other statistics in here as well, where we start getting into details. Now, it's important, I think, for you folks to know that every single one of these details, these numbers it comes up with, there's actually pages that tell us how it calculates this. So they're not like black box details. You can actually go find out. And the other piece I actually like about these there's best practices around not just like here's a number, but here's a number, here's what you should be looking for, here's how you can improve and change it. I think that's not bad, like as opposed to just leaving people floundering. So the 18% of your employees spending 25 hours or more in collaboration every week. That's great, but when are they focusing on work? 68% of your employees spend most of their times in long or large meetings. That's exhausting. How do you help shorten those meetings? How do you make them more effective? And then there's things like preventing employee burnout. So long hours. 35% are working after hours for more than 5 hours each week. Identifying who those people are and how you can reduce it. And how, of course, how can you use other Microsoft tools to help you bring that down? And then we get into even more details of things like focus without interruptions. So 11% of employees get less than 10 hours of weekly uninterrupted time for work. This is where it's starting to bring together that whole, like, people are they're sending messages, they're emailing, all that's tracked, put together, sent to a leader in this numbery thing, but what's in the background, it's there. Optimize manager meetings. So how often are managers attending meetings? How many people are in there? How long do they go? And there are some weird things here too, where even after I look at the calculation, I'm kind of like, I don't get it. But this one specifically is 2% of employees can drive change with 59% of your workforce. How does it figure that out? And how does it identify who those people are? Because of course, if 2% can drive that change, what use is it to a leader if they don't figure out who that 2% of people are so that they can influence that way? But this is where we go into the next piece. The next piece is about the advanced insights. Okay. Now, all of this data that we see, of course, is being held in probably Dataverse. I haven't checked into that. It's held somewhere. You can access it. I know you can access it. And it starts bringing some other thoughts together. Things like improving focus. This is again organization wide. I like this one here. Taking breaks. 21% of time employees stay active for more than 12 hours daily during the past 4 weeks. That's upsetting. No one should be active for 12 hours straight. Handling urgency, embracing flexibility, all this good stuff. Pretty basic. And then it starts breaking it down. Now, these are the Power BI reports that are just examples. And I actually have I have a link and a QR code, so you can go explore all of these. There's many, 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 many examples of Power BI reports based on the insights analytics that you can subscribe to and get. So again, here it is tracking their collaboration, a lot of focus on collaboration. But again, what I do appreciate is the fact that there's some information below about how people are working, why it's important, how to interpret. And then it gets a bit creepier again. So for things like weekly hours spent in meetings, emails, chats, and calls, this is interesting. However, this one here is about when I'm running a meeting, who's writing an email, who's writing a message, who's chatting, who's doing something other than being active in my meeting and watching me. Those are the kinds of things that can be tracked and seen. And of course, it's hopefully going to create some better, meeting culture. A little bit more detail about that are things like, hey, who are these multitaskers? So multitaskers at this particular level are during a meeting, who's doing something else. That's what it's looking at. And it's also identifying, hey, in what specific department are they in that this is happening? And while there's no names, and that's not being tracked, if you start matching these things up, you could figure it out. But just to know that these things are back here, and I think they can be used for good, and you could do a lot of good with them. But of course, if you have leadership looking in another direction, just be aware of that too. Now, here's the QR code in case you want. Otherwise, you can just go to this URL here. But it's so cool. There's so many things to go through, and just be aware that when you do open up the Power BI page from Viva Insights, you can expand it. There's a little double-ended arrow, and then you'll have a drop down in the bottom left-hand corner where you can select from all the different types of dashboards. And keep in mind, these are just demos of things that are used with the data it's collecting. This is not all the data it's collecting by any stretch of the means. So that is what I wanted to take you through for the insights portion. The final piece that we're going to go through, and this won't take too long your time here, is the licensing. So let's start off with the easy one. Viva Connections is free. It's always been free. It will continue to be free unless they add something onto it. This is the app rail that we talked about. This is the app on your phone. This is the app inside of Teams. All these things are free. They're easy to set up, and they actually have some very good purpose. Like I say, I really like it for, kind of reinforcing what the idea of the environment is. As long as you have a license, Microsoft license, it's in there for you. And I can confirm that as someone using a business basic license. It's there. I can use it. No problem. Second one is learning. So the basic is free. Basic comes without any recommendations. You can't use recommendations. You can't use content from other learning management systems. You can't use calendar integration. And there's some other things from the roadmap coming up that you can't have. So one of the things that they're going to be adding is like that calendar integration where you can automatically block time for learning. So you have focus, and now at some point in 2022, they're going to have block time for learning and help you associate that to Viva learning pieces. We'll see when this comes out, but the learning piece right now it's changing daily. It is being updated probably as we speak. It's crazy. But the good news is that premium is $4 per person per month, which isn't horrible. It does add up, of course, but hey, we've seen worse. The next is topics, and for basic, there's no such thing. You either have topics or you don't. So topics is $4 per person per month. Again, same thing, and it's going to start putting all those pieces together. And there are some cool things coming up in the roadmap for topics too. So right now, as you saw in my examples there, we have Teams, Search, and SharePoint, where it automatically makes that little hover. Their plan is to also do it inside of Outlook and Yammer. They also want to have an answer concierge, so you can have a little, probably like a chat bot, I'm guessing, where you can type some things in and bring it back, where it will automatically go search topics and take you to the card. Next, we have Insights. The basic is free, and of course, it's collecting that information whether you want it to or not. The basic part being your daily insights, your mindfulness, your checking off your anxiety level, that kind of thing. All free, no problem. Premium is when you want to get into the leadership and management recommendations and those additional insights, the custom analysis, being able to access all that extra data that's back there. So that is that. But then there are other ways to do this as well. There's the Viva Suite, which is all 4 full modules. That's learning, topics, connections, and insights. You can get all 4 for $12 per person per month. But then there's a different, the other thing is right now it's currently on sale, and I clearly don't work for Microsoft. It's currently on sale for 25% off until September 1st, which makes it $9 per person per month. And then there's also the Viva Suite plus Glint. Now, what Glint is a way that you can capture employee feedback, and it will take those surveys in and include them into your insights. It's customizable. You can embed different actions into it. You can do 360 feedback review systems inside of Glint. And you can get all those 4 modules plus Glint for $15 per person per month. But of course, there's a 25% off right now as well until September 1st for $12 per person per month. And with that is my presentation. I hope that you have learned at least one thing new about what a Microsoft Viva is today, and know that if you hear someone say a Microsoft Viva, you can at least ask which one. And I will pass it back to the team at the Kansas City user group here.